All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to our rainy day edition of our quarterly series, Policy on Tap. I'm Corey Atkins, Vice President of Public Policy and General Counsel for the Asheville Area Chamber of Commerce. Thank you all for registering and being here with us today. Policy on Tap is a series that we're doing that's more of a casual take on important policy issues here in Western North Carolina and Asheville-Buncombe County. And today we're really going to delve into elections. But before that, I really want to recognize the sponsors who make this event happen. They've been very gracious with us in helping us adapt and be nimble during these trying times and really try to bring value to you as members and the public, but also capture what makes us so resilient here at the Asheville Chamber. And together we think we are more resilient in these times. And so with that, I have sitting with me here Walt Dickinson with Wicked Weed Brewing Company. They are our food and beverage and location sponsor. We're coming to you live from Cultura Restaurant here, connected to the Funkatorium. And Walt, I want you to take it away. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, I'm so excited to be here, and thank you to the Chamber as a whole. I mean, this has been a long relationship we've had with the Chamber, building our business here, and the work you guys do is so important for small businesses like ours. So anyways, we got a lot to talk about today. So first of all, just really excited to be hosting the Policy on Tap discussions here. I think it's really great to have you in our space. I'm just going to share with you a couple. Well, we have all these beers here, which we'll talk about. I guess this is going to be part of a raffle. So this is Pernicious. This is our IPA. 65% of our production, one of our flagships, and then we've got our new Raspberry Starfruit Burst down there, and this is our Guilty Pleasures 4-pack for the fall. So some good prizes there. Outside of that, I want to talk to you a little bit about the beers that build program and some things we're doing to give back. We've got 2 beers we want to talk about there. First one being Y'all Means Ale. This is a beer we produce each year in support of Blue Ridge Pride. It also kind of meets at the same time as we do our own Pride-toberfest. It's kind of our merging of the Pride Fest along with standard Oktoberfest.
Could be.
Wicked Weed, my sister Jessica is trans.
I just checked it while ago.
The other formative brewer in this company. So our relationship with
than it was yesterday.
Is really
so
to me and the
I'm
company,
thinking
and this
it's
beer
water
infiltration.
and
we produce a
I noticed,
saison where we use
you don't
a
look at
rainbow of
stuff
colors,
like this until you're
from
thinking about it. But
every color ingredient,
our
right?
driveway,
and it's a really nice beer. All of that going to the Southern. Sorry, I'm forgetting. Campaign for Southern Equality, which is a great local nonprofit here. The other beer I want to talk to you guys about, so Pride-toberfest, please tune in. There'll be kind of a virtual thing. You can obviously come by the pubs, but that'll be on September 29th. I will be there in full rainbow lederhosens. So, yeah, cheers to that.
There you go.
So second beer we want to talk about is Coastal Love. So this was a beer that, this was kind of it. We have Appalachia as part of the Beers That Build program, and that's doing a lot locally. But then when Florence hit the state, I spent a lot of time on the coast. It's a very important, beer market to us in a lot of ways. And we are a mountain community, but we're connected to the coast in our state. And so we thought it was really our responsibility to try and do the best we could to give back to the brewing community down there. We have a lot of friends in the Wilmington area who have breweries, as there's, 300 and some breweries in North Carolina. So we have breweries everywhere. So anyways, we went down, worked with a brewery down there called Broomtail and also with Green Man here to produce a beer that we called Coastal Love. It's just a hazy IPA, and no tricks or anything. It's just there's no seawater in it or anything. It's just a really good hazy IPA. And it was to go 100% back to the breweries down there to make sure that they could get the lights back on and get their businesses running. So it's taken off. It's going to be one of our biggest brands this next year. It's distributed all across the Southeast. There's a big chunk of the profits that are going back to basically wetland restoration in coastal regions along with hurricane relief. So just a couple things we're doing, but thanks so much for having us, and excited to hear what you guys are going to talk about.
Yeah, thanks so much, Walt. We appreciate it. Thanks for hosting us here at Cultura. It's a really beautiful space. I recommend you come by sometime in the Funkatorium, which is attached right next door off of Cox Avenue. So thanks for being here. Appreciate it. Yeah, cheers. Yeah. Up next, we have our presenting sponsor. Yes, actually, can we ask everyone to please mute if you're in the Zoom room? I understand it's kind of difficult to hear everything, so make sure you have your microphone muted if you're not speaking. Up next, though, we do have Jeff Stahl with Allen Stahl and Kilbourne. Allen Stahl and Kilbourne are the presenting sponsors for the Policy on Tap series. And Jeff, why don't you take it away? And thanks so much for you guys for, again, working with us. Thanks for being here today. Go ahead, Jeff.
Sure. Thanks, Corey. It's kind of hard to follow that sponsor because I don't have any beer to give away. Anyways, we want to take a quick second to thank you and the Chamber for doing your best to continue this Policy on Tap series during these challenging times. We know it's not easy, and of course, I know we would all love to be there in person, enjoying our tasty beverage of choice. Just to tell you a little bit about our firm, Allen Stahl and Kilbourne, we're a full-service firm. We are relationship focused, which I think is something that sets us apart in that we represent all businesses, large and small, and we truly are concerned about building client relationships, long-term client relationships. We pretty much handle anything that a small or large business needs. We do believe that we're uniquely positioned in the things that we do for the Asheville and Western North Carolina lifestyles. We're a little over a year old as a firm, but we've already doubled in size. We now have 11 attorneys. We practice in various pieces that fall within uniquely Asheville WNC lifestyles, such as construction law, zoning, land use development, craft beverage, hospitality, including food and beverage, outdoor gear and outdoor builders. We're do commercial real estate, homeowner associations, pretty much the full gambit. We can be found at asklawNC.com if anybody wants to check us out. To the clients that we have that are joined today, thank you for everything you do for us. We do appreciate all of our clients, and we would not be successful without you. Thanks.
Okay, all right. Thanks, Jeff. We appreciate that. And again, thank you so much to Allen Stahl and Kilbourne, AskLawNC.com for all their partnership in the public policy department here. All right, now to the good stuff, ladies and gentlemen. I know why you're all here. It's election season. It's after Labor Day. Things are really firing up. I'm sure if you watch any of the local networks at any point during the day, whether it's watching a football game, the NBA playoffs, or the local news, you are being bombarded with election cycle advertising. And, it's annoying to some. It's a lot of fun and a lot of fodder for us political nerds. So I'm sure you are all aware of what's going on. But allow me to introduce our special guest here today. This is Professor Chris Cooper, Western Carolina University's head of political science department. Chris and I have been friends for a long time, and we're trying to make this a casual conversation, here to answer your questions, but also talk about the local take on what's going on in national, state, and local politics. And so I'm going to call you Chris, if that's okay.
I think that's what you should call me.
Yeah. We're sitting here drinking beers, talking politics like we would normally, like we did after the night of the primaries, I believe. Right. I saw you out that week at Thirsty Monk after that.
Yep.
And so we're going to try to keep it casual. I know you do this a lot. Yeah. You study it. We can get in the weeds on it. But I really want to hear what people have to say, what your questions are out there. So please type them in the Zoom chat box if you can. Those can be relayed to us by the communication staff, or use the raise your hand function, and you'll be able to actually ask the question out loud, and that'll be relayed to us as well. So we encourage you that as we go along, please type in or raise your hand to ask a question, and we'll try to address that to the best of our limited abilities. Well, my limited abilities anyways. I'll hand it off to you, Chris. So thanks everyone for tuning in today, and let's get right in.
Yeah.
Chris, everyone, sort of the big vitriol that you see and all the hullabaloo right now is focused on the national election. It's a presidential election year, and not just any presidential election year. It's really a tough. People are very one-sided in this one, I believe. You're either on this side of the fence or the other. There's not many. I think I heard the number was somewhere between 5 and 7% that they're actually aiming for as far as swing voters this year.
It might just be 5 or 7, might not even be a percent. Just 5 or 7.
5 or 7 total. Yeah. So, but let's talk a little bit about it. I really want to hone in on the local elections and really get people a sense of that. We're going to do that towards the end of this conversation. But we'd be bereft if we didn't talk about what's going on nationally, how that's going to steer things that happen state and locally. Yeah. But let's talk about, what do you see as sort of the main issues right now in the national elections for us? And what are some of the things that are spurning the large number of absentee ballots, for instance? That's been a big issue this time around. So I'm going to lob that out there to you and let you take it away with it.
No, I'm glad to be here. And just so folks know, so Corey asked me to do this. He said we get to drink beer, talk politics. He said no preparation, no collars.
Nope.
So that was those were the rules we had to go with. But look, I mean, I think obviously, the economy is the number one issue in any election. So Quinnipiac, I can never quite say it. The university up in New England, they just put out a poll that showed that 19% of people said that the economy is still the number one issue in America and in North Carolina, even right now. Of course, COVID-19 is right behind that in the double digits. So I think those are clearly going to be the issues. As far as what's driving this, we'll talk more about that obviously, but what's driving this mail-in voting, and just to give folks a sense of it, as of today, 14 times as many people have requested absentee ballots as had the same day in 2016. 14 times. Those are like huge numbers. The returns are starting to come in. So North Carolina is the first in flight, and we're the first in balloting. So we sent out our ballots to first. They're already starting to come in here in Buncombe County and Henderson, all throughout the state. 97 counties now have returned at least one ballot. So clearly COVID is driving a lot of that, right? The same reason that you've got a mask in front of your beer and that I had a mask on until a second ago is, of course, what's driving this whole mail-in thing. The other kind of interesting thing that I don't think is too wonky, but usually mail-in voting, it's about 50-50. Democrats and Republicans, they both kind of like it. This election, though, it's up for everybody, but it's really up amongst the Democrats. So I think the president's rhetoric kind of against mail-in voting has stuck to some degree.
Right. So it's helped his side of the fence, so to speak, or the more conservatives think they're just going to continue their normal routine of either early voting or voting in person, whereas the Democrats are using it really as a driver for turnout from what I've seen.
Yes.
And so that's why you're seeing this huge spike in Democrats specifically requesting absentee ballots.
That's right.
Is there any concern? I mean, what about the whole Postal Service thing? Do you see that's going to play the factor in the turnout, or do you think is there much to that, or just really just political games they're playing?
I think a little bit of political games. I mean, I would say get your ballot in early. That would be my take. Whoever you're voting for, get that dang thing in early. I turned mine in on the first day that I could last Tuesday, so I'm already done and voted.
Wow.
Right. It's one thing I'm on top of. But but at any rate, look, I think the postal thing will matter. I think it'll matter later on if people get their ballots in early. I think that's the key. I think the other thing we're seeing this year, this is more anecdotal. Like I don't have any great data behind this. But I think a lot of folks are using it almost like an insurance policy. So I'm talking to, just regular voters, and they're saying, I requested a ballot, but I might not use it. It's just if things get bad, if COVID gets bad, if I get sick, I want to have that insurance policy I can go on. So we got huge request numbers. Well, still remains to be seen what our return numbers are like.
Okay. So 270 electoral votes. Yeah. That's what it takes to become president of the United States, according to our Constitution. Where are the numbers right now as far as what's sure and unsure? And then how many toss-ups are there? Where does North Carolina fit into that range?
So, North Carolina fits smack in the middle. I'll answer the last question first, right? So we are, like I said, we're the swingiest of the swing states. The other day, Jeff Tiberi over at WNC said that North Carolina is a squishy state. I don't know. You can sort of choose your adjective, right? Whichever one you like. The point is, we're a state that could go either way. We can talk more about that. As far as kind of how it's looking right now, Biden appears to have kind of probably a small edge. He's got a fairly sizable edge in the popular vote, right? If we just counted everybody's vote, I think Biden's feeling pretty good. But we don't do it that way. We have these electoral votes you talked about. And because of that, it looks like Biden has kind of a slight edge there. Right. North Carolina is going to matter. Pennsylvania is going to matter. Wisconsin's going to matter. Arizona, Colorado, Florida, Iowa to some degree. Some folks say Maine, which is this whole thing. Yeah, Maine has like this weird elector deal we can talk about later.
Maine is weird.
Maine is weird. Yeah. And then Maine and Nebraska are the weird ones. And then Michigan, of course, being the other one, as you mentioned, that I think could be key to moving forward.
Yeah, and just an aside, Maine and Nebraska actually split their electoral votes. That's what we're talking about. Most states, it's all or nothing. So if you win the state, you get all the votes. Speaking of that, and since you have your Cast More Votes shirt on, I told you to dress casually, and I like what you came up with. We're going to go to our first poll question, if that's okay, Aaron. And our first poll question is, are you registered to vote? You can vote right now in the Zoom call. It is anonymous, I believe. So no one's going to know. No one's going to judge you. But are you registered to vote? Yes, no, or not sure? Let me know when we have some results on that.
We've got about half of the people responding. Give it another minute.
If you aren't registered to vote, I'll fill a gap here. You can actually go to our website now, www.ashevillechamber.org, and search 2020 election guide. We have links on there to show you where to register, how to register, as well as where you can find your own polling place. So start to use that. We're going to start putting all these things up here, including this conversation here today. We'll be on that 2020 election guide. So make sure you register. If not, and where are we at with our numbers, Aaron?
Everyone who responded, 100% registered.
100% registered. Okay. Well, I expect no less, honestly, from this crowd. If you're tuning into this talk, I mean, you might just like beer and Wicked Weed, which is great, or be big fans of Alan Stahl and Kilborn, but my guess is you're pretty in tune with political action and care enough to watch this. So thanks for tuning in, and thanks for being registered. North Carolina, 15 electoral votes, right? Mm-hmm. As you mentioned, you listed out the states that are kind of in play right now. Do you have any semblance of how much money is being spent in this state by the presidential candidates at this point, including their unaffiliated PACs and those kinds of things?
Yeah, I don't have any kind of raw number, but huge numbers. And I think if you sort of track the campaign spending, and right now it's been a while since all the reporting's come in, North Carolina tends to be right at the top of the list. And so our U.S. Senate race, which I know we'll talk about in a little bit, has an incredible amount of spending. Of course, the presidential election's got a ton. We've seen these surrogates visit us, right? So it seems like every member of the Trump family, and it's a big old family, they seem to have all been in Western North Carolina, some of them, and North Carolina more generally. So yeah, we're seeing big numbers here. We're going to continue to see it. So if you're sick of those ads that you talked about at the beginning, I got bad news for you, because they're going to be more coming soon.
Right. I think they're just fighting for airspace like you wouldn't believe.
We've got a real relevant question here.
Great. Okay.
How effective are the TV ads in changing the voters' vote?
How effective, the question is, in case folks couldn't hear that, is how effective are these TV ads that I mentioned at the beginning and you just alluded to in swaying votes? Is there empirical data on that?
Yeah, there's a lot, right? So each individual ad, like very little. So if you just take somebody, you show them one ad, you show them no more ads, they ain't moving. But what it can do, of course, is to motivate a base. And I think that's really today where elections happen, right? So where the real winning and losing happens. So you can win by persuasion. So I get Corey to come over to my side, or Corey might not vote. He already kind of likes me. We're friends. So then I get him to go from off the couch to actually voting. That mobilization piece is increasingly where elections are won and lost.
Right.
And over the course of time, each one of these ads have a compounding effect, right? They remind you this is going on. They remind you what you like about these candidates. So look, persuasion, very little. Mobilization, when compounded over the course of a campaign, yeah, they matter.
Yeah, and I think the repetition is a big thing. And there's so many people who are experts out there in marketing, and the people that they hire for these campaigns now are just so scientific about how they can use persuasion in the words that they use in ads, the subliminal messaging they use on your Facebook feed, on your Twitter feed, on your Instagram posts even. So it's really interesting time to be alive and to see the way that's really become an art. And those people get paid really well to do that. And it looks like we have another question.
We have somebody who raised their hand.
Okay. Okay. Go ahead, Ben, whenever you're unmuted.
Yeah. Hey, just wanted a quick question here. So there's this large and ever growing folks in the electorate here, the independent or really unaffiliated voters. And I just wanted to know, Chris, if you've got any information about how do they break down, are they, because I don't think they're truly independent. To me, it seems like it's a lot of people are just kind of tired of picking Republican or Democrat. And I was wondering if by certain counties, you might see just the same percentage of Republicans or Democrats, amongst the unaffiliated voters.
All right, Ben's question I'm trying to repeat for our host here in the site. He's asking about the independent and unaffiliated voters and how they might break down by counties. Is it really people who are independent, or are they just kind of not Republican, not Democratic? Can you expect anything from those people who are independent?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So Ben, for folks that don't know, Ben is an elected official in West North Carolina. So he's on the Silva Town Board. I know everybody's top office, but
Silva's a great town.
It is a great town. It is a great town. Great courthouse, good town. Good breweries also. At any rate, the unaffiliated voters. So I guess a couple of like factoids. It didn't used to be that much of an issue in North Carolina politics. So for a long time, most people the vast majority were Democrat or Republican. But we've seen a massive increase in these unaffiliated voters over the last couple of decades. So by 2022, unaffiliated will be the largest group in North Carolina politics. And as September 2017, unaffiliated actually took over Republican. So right now, if you look at voter registration, it goes Democrat, then unaffiliated, then Republican in the state of North Carolina. And that unaffiliated is already the largest group in Ben's home county of Jackson, as well as Buncombe, and all sorts of other places throughout Western North Carolina.
As far as, is it a young person thing, that's kind of the independent thinker, like I don't want to be boxed in a corner, or is it more like immigration? Are we seeing people move here from other states and other locations, and they don't want to register with either party?
So it's I'll be very ecumenical about that answer. It's both, right? So some of it is young people. So from the age of 18 to 45, unaffiliated is already the largest category in North Carolina politics. Also, a lot of it are these immigrants. And then there's also about 1 million people in North Carolina that have switched parties over the last 10 years. Unaffiliated is the biggest sort of, they've received the most of those. As far as how they vote, we don't have great data, but the best data we have is which primary they choose. Right. So in 2008, these unaffiliated folks, they went for the Democratic primary in huge numbers. They went for the Republican primary in 10, and 12, and 14, and 16, and 18. 2020, though, is a time where they went back to the Democratic primary. So maybe if you're trying to read the tea leaves, that's some that might say, hey, maybe these unaffiliated folks are starting to swing back to the Democratic Party, or maybe they just wanted more of an exciting primary.
Right, and I think that's got something to do with that part, probably, because the primary in the Democratic side, of course, was hotly contested, and there were, 16 candidates at one point in time, whereas the presidential nominee on the Republican side is pretty much assumed. And if you're unaffiliated, for those of you who don't know, you can pick which primary you want to vote in, depending on what you choose in a given year. Yes. So speaking of that, let's go to our next poll question, if we can, Aaron. How do you plan to vote, you personally? So this is your time to vote again. Are you going to early vote? Are you going to vote the day of the election? So a lot of people are traditionalists and like to go that day, which really is a cool thing, I guess, And then are you going to mail or absentee like our friend Professor Cooper here did? So early vote, day of, or absentee or mail-in ballot? That's our next poll question. So please vote now. While they're doing that, I think it's interesting, Chris, that North Carolina is truly a purple state. We've switched back and forth, year to year for, from presidential election to presidential election. Is the Electoral College, is it something that we even need anymore? Like, I know there's been a lot of debate about this. How do constitutional scholars see this?
It's a great question, right? And so I think folks who want to get rid of it, I think in some ways maybe kind of controversial, but we're drinking beer and having fun, right? So if you want to get rid of it, I think your opportunity was during Obama's presidency, right? So after 2000, it was super partisan, right? If you liked the Electoral College, you were kind of a Republican. If you didn't like it, you were a Democrat. After the last election, the same thing happened. In those intervening years, it's like we kind of had collective amnesia. We forgot which party tends to benefit. And I think that was kind of the moment that we could have had some action on this Electoral College.
Right.
So do we need it? I think smart people could disagree about whether it's a good thing or not. I think we're stuck with it for a good while longer either way.
Yeah, I think it's just the political will really has to be there. And that's a constitutional amendment type of thing. And it's really difficult to get done. Aaron, what are the results of our poll there?
45% planning for early voting.
45% for early voting. 21% day of. 27% by mail. So 27% by mail. So that's more than day of, which I would guess historically in the trends have definitely not been the case. It's always been probably a mix of day of, early voting, and with mail-in way behind.
That's exactly right. Yeah, mail-in is always the thing.
Right. So that's interesting. All right. Well, thanks you guys for sharing that information and what you plan to do. Let's move on. I know we can spend a ton of time here on the presidential election. Literally an hour is not even enough, but I really do want to hone in a little bit more here locally in Western North Carolina and talk about some interesting things we have going on here politically. Before I do that, though, it's trivia time. Aaron, you're excited, I know. It's trivia time, ladies and gentlemen. So get your typing fingers ready. We're going to type this in the chat, and Aaron's going to signal to me the winner the second it comes in. So be ready to type. The question I have for you is, which state or states, if there's more than one, do not give all of their electors to one candidate? In other words, what states actually have split electoral college votes? Type them in quickly. Maine. Who said Maine? Was that the first one? All right, Sabrina, congratulations. You are the.
Hold on there, Corey.
What's that?
Nebraska.
They're
It's
both.
Maine and Nebraska.
Well,
We get
she
two.
She said both.
She's a genius.
Great. There you go. Thanks for paying attention. Either you knew that or you paid attention earlier. So you are the proud winner of one of the Guilty Treasures variety pack from Wicked Weed. Please message Aaron or Asheville. It's probably under Asheville Area Chamber of Commerce. How you would like to collect that. You can come by the chamber and pick it up from the visitor center, and we'll try to swing by your office possibly if that's cool and safe with you. So let us know. Congratulations. All right. So we had a question about the Senate race, but I want to set the stage a little bit before we get to that question. It is Tom Tillis is the current senator who's up for re-election this time around. Cal Cunningham is a Democrat who's Army Reserve veteran, I believe, a former state senator from the Charlotte area, right? And it's a really competitive race. Most of the polls I've seen have Cunningham up recently. The last couple of months, he's been up in most polls generally, the averages if you look at them. But this Senate race is definitely a target for the national parties. And the reason that is there's really 12 competitive races. The Democrats think they have a chance. Right now, the Republicans have a majority in the Senate and the U.S. Congress. 12 are competitive, including North Carolina, which is now considered a toss-up state, not just for presidential purposes, but for this all-important Senate chamber. As we've seen during the COVID relief debates, the House Democrats, who are in charge right now, Nancy Pelosi, have passed a number of things that the Senate, led by Mitch McConnell on the Republican side, definitely has blocked and has not passed. And then you have a Republican president currently, of course. How important is this race? What could you see happening? What if you put your crystal ball in? What do you forecast happening in this race? How would that turn the tide? What would that say generally about national politics and where we're headed?
Yeah. So this is, it's a critical race, right? So we know that the Republicans, of course, have the majority, as you said, in the Senate. There's kind of one weird footnote, right? So we have this Democrat from Alabama who won under these weird circumstances we won't get into here. He's probably going to lose. Right. So we think there's sort of a core four Senate races that matter in the country, right? Kind of like the Final Four. If you're a basketball fan, this is the core four races. So North Carolina is one of those. So this race will be the key, I think, to who holds on to, or to who has the majority moving forward in the United States Senate. So Tillis, of course, is the incumbent. Cunningham is the challenger. So you might think, well, of course, the incumbent tends to have the advantage. But as you know, North Carolina's kind of weird. Like in this seat, we seem to be kind of schizophrenic about it, right? So we, for a whole long time, we said we kind of like Jesse Helms.
Right.
Then we said, you know what? Maybe we like a Democrat. Maybe we like a Republican. Maybe we like a Democrat. Maybe we like a Republican.
Right.
So nobody's held on to the seat in multiple terms since Jesse Helms. Okay. So this one it's a toss-up right now. Cunningham is faring better, as you said, and I think I've seen like one poll that has Tillis up, but for the most part, it's either Cunningham up or within the margin of error.
Right.
This one's going to go down to the wire. It's super expensive. It is, by some measures, the most expensive Senate race in the country. The one that may beat it, oddly enough, is South Carolina toward the state to our south, which has got this fascinating race going on as well. This Jamie Harrison, this Democratic candidate's raising tons of money. Right. But Cunningham and Tillis are no slouch in the fundraising either.
Right. So, who's ahead right now in fundraising between the two of them? I haven't looked recently.
Harrison is. So Harrison raised
between
Cunningham. Cunningham's got a pretty significant lead over Tillis.
Wow. Okay.
And really throughout the state, there are exceptions to this rule, but for the most part, the Democrats are kind of coming out of the gate more heavy with the fundraising at the General Assembly levels, and it will talk about, but also at the Senate level.
So you think that's influenced by what's happening nationally, though? Do you think that's dictating this interest in the Senate race? Because it really could be a full swing for the Democrats, or you have a status quo maybe at the top and maybe a slim majority for Senate, or it could flip, and the president could be sort of the last stop for Republican ideals, I guess. So that it's really an interesting thing. I want to keep going. We do have an open seat race here locally in U.S. Congress. So the NC 11th district was vacated by Mark Meadows to become chief of staff for President Trump, of course. And I failed to mention earlier, I can't believe I did this. I was going to ask you, you think we'll see the candidates here locally? President Trump's been to Asheville, the Asheville area, very recently, less than a month ago for the convention. He went to Mills River, and had quite a crowd there at the airport. So But here locally, the big story has been this open seat race between Madison Cawthorn, a very young 25-year-old Republican candidate. If he's elected, it'll be the youngest member of Congress, maybe in history, or at least
in 100 years.
At least in a long time, right? Yeah. And then Mo Davis is the Democrat who's running. How do you see that race going? What have you noticed? I know you took part in they had some debates recently, and you were one of the moderators for that. Yeah. So how do you see that race going?
Yeah, it's a fascinating race, right? I think it's the most interesting congressional race we have. So the backstory again, as you said, Meadows stepped down to become chief of staff for President Trump. We haven't had a member of Congress since then, which I think is actually worth kind of pausing on for a second and thinking about. So since March through January, we're going to have no member of Congress representing Western North Carolina. So you're Democrat, you're Republican, you're a Green Party member, a Libertarian.
Right.
That affects your representation.
It's interesting. I'm sorry. I don't want to cut you off.
This is the good stuff.
You know, I learned this because I've never lived in a district where this happened, and I knew Congressman Meadows, former chief of staff. I called him one day because we had a constituent, a member that needed a service that only our congressional member can provide. Sometimes it's a recommendation letter or something like that. And apparently your Senate or your congressional seat goes to the House clerk. So it actually goes to the staff clerk person for the House, and any inquiries that you have as a citizen of that district goes through the House clerk. And that's sort of how you get your constituent services needs filled. But you're right, politically, you don't have that representative, that voice for your region during the term of that. I believe the governor could have called a special election. Is that correct? There could have been an election to put someone there, but he neglected to do that. So we've been these months now without an official congressperson representing us. So, but anyways, go back to the race. I just wanted to give that little caveat.
I'm glad you did, and I'll walk out briefly on that for a second. Yeah, Cooper could have called that. He didn't call that. So again, there's plenty of blame to go around on either party here, or no blame if you have that perspective. And I'll just say, it's not like there's a nefarious thing going on here. Like, we have open seats often throughout the country.
Right.
This just happens to be a really long one. Last time it happened in North Carolina, they called the special election to be concurrent. Think about how confusing this would be. At the same time as the November election. So you'd go to vote for like NC11, but also for NC11. It's like NC11 for a couple months, NC11 for the next term.
Right.
Anyway, so you got that backstory. Then you've got Mo Davis. You've got Madison Cawthorn, the 25-year-old, Mo Davis, former colonel. They're running against each other. 3 interesting debates, one at Southwestern Community College, 2 at Western Carolina University that were sponsored by Blue Ridge Public Radio, Smoky Mountain News, Mountain Express. Check those out online. This is a district that has been redistricted. Of course, Asheville, Buncombe County is now back in the 11th Congressional District. Right. It looks slightly more similar to the way it looked when Keith Schuler represented this district, who's the last Democrat to represent it. But still, 57% of the people in this district voted for Donald Trump in the last election.
Right.
So it is, according to all the national prognosticators, a lean Republican district. But this race is getting pretty nasty, as you know well, right? So we had some Instagram posts of Cawthorn that folks were hitting on, then some Twitter posts of Davis that folks are hitting on. And so we're having this one out on social media. We're having it out in debates. And I guess if you're watching, you're going to have it out in the ballot box in November.
Yeah, it's a real 2020 way to have these debates and stuff. I mean, I know there's these formal ones, but then you have these sparring back and forth on Twitter. And I mean, if nothing else, these guys are interesting. Both of them are. They do not care about what the image. Well, I mean, I'm sure they care about their image, but they're willing to say whatever's on their mind, and there's no question about that on the social media platform. So it's definitely, for a student of political science, it's something interesting to watch. Okay, so we'll move on to some state races. I don't want to get too much into the gubernatorial race or council state. You've done a really good profile of that with what was the podcast you were on?
Thanks. It was the State of Things on WUNC.
So I would recommend people go listen to that for council state. I want to move on to our local delegation and our local races, but definitely check that out because Professor Cooper does an excellent job on there for all the council of state races that are going on. We do have some West North Carolina candidates interested in those, so definitely check that out. Our districts were redrawn in Buncombe County specifically. And so now you had what was sort of the entire city in one district for State House, I'm talking about, and then sort of the 2 county districts, Allen and Edge, represented by Brian Turner, John Ager, Susan Fisher represented the city district. Now you kind of have the city split in thirds.
Right.
How do you see those races going? Do they favor one side or the other more with the new districts, and including the new open seat, Senator Terry Van Dyne, unfortunately had an unsuccessful bid for lieutenant governor. Love to see some West North Carolina representation, is why I say unfortunate. But she left her Senate seat. That's an open race now. Our local city council member, Julie Mayfield, is running, as well as Bob Penland on the Republican side for the open seat. But these House districts interest me because they're completely new. The makeup of the electorate for each one of those districts is completely new. And where do you see that going? And we'll move on to the next series of county commission races and how that's impacted. But yeah, I'm interested to hear your take on the House races first.
Yeah, I mean, so just statewide, to bring it up just a little, and then we'll bring it right back down to the region.
Sure.
So we've got, of course, the Republicans that currently control both chambers in North Carolina General Assembly. They used to have supermajority. Go into that now, unless you want to, but now they have majority control. There is a chance the Democrats could take over the majority. I think the odds are the Republicans will hold on, but those aren't great odds, all right?
Do you mean in the House?
Really in both chambers.
Oh, you think they got a chance at both? Okay.
I do think they have a chance at both, but it's not, again, not great odds. If I were going to Vegas, I'd wear a mask, and then I would I wouldn't bet on those. But anyway, it's possible. So all these races really matter. Most of the Western North Carolina races pretty strongly favor one party over the other, including the ones in Buncombe County. On the House side, the most competitive race in Western North Carolina on paper, again, we'll see what happens, but on paper would probably be the 119th district, which is sort of kick west a little bit. So it's Jackson County, it's Swain, and it's a little bit of Haywood County. That is the 5th time that Joe Sam Queen and Mike Clampett are running against each other. So if you're a Buncombe County person, check this one out. You're a Rocky fan. This is, I think, the Tommy Morrison fight.
Morrison.
Yeah. So anyway, that is on paper the most competitive.
Yeah.
Again, which is not to say that we couldn't have some interesting things happen elsewhere.
Right. I think the new makeup, getting to the local, to the Buncombe County districts at least, you went from sort of a 50-50 split on each side of the city. The city's obviously like 75% Democrat. I think with the new splits, Democrats are the majority in all 3 districts now from a registration standpoint. And so you got to think they're favored, but again, that's why we have elections and you have to vote. So keep an eye on those. It's really interesting. Before we move on to the local elections, though, I did want to ask another trivia question. So everyone get ready to type out your answer to the trivia question. All right. How much money do the members of the General Assembly members, so we're moving on from them, how much does a General Assembly member get paid? So it's considered a part-time position. They're considered a part-time legislature. But how much does a person elected to the General Assembly actually make? Do we have it?
35,000, 13,000, 45,000, 15,600.
That's the closest one. All right, who was that? Closest one. Parker. All right, Parker. Man, you won something last time. How about that? Good job, Parker. So we're going to give you the other 4-pack you'll see there of the guilty was it pleasures? Right. Guilty. Did I say treasures last time? I sure did, didn't I? So guilty pleasures. So the guilty pleasures 4-pack, Parker. Way to go, man. Congratulations. So local races, we talked about the House districts being divided. We're one of the unique places in North Carolina, and the Buncombe County's county commission districts are tied directly to the way those House districts are drawn. This was done statutorily. This isn't a constitutional thing. Not every county is built like this. So we actually have our county commission lines follow exactly along districts 114, 115, 116 for the state House races. Because of that, we essentially created a new seat or a new position within the county commission. So there's actually an open seat in the northwestern part of the county. So Lester Region, Sandy Mush, sort of west and then north. Let's talk about those 3 races. Of course, the chairmanship's also up, up this election. So you have the 3 county commission seats. So depending on where you vote, you'll be voting for that, plus the chairman race, which is the incumbent, Brownie Newman, running against someone that actually sits next to him on the dais up there, Robert Presley, who's the representative out of District 2, Republican representative. So let's talk about that race, who's favored right now, and then the 3 other races, how do you see those playing out?
You know, I mean, right, as you pointed out, we've got sort of redrawn districts here, and we've got, of course, no polling, right? So what do political scientists love to do? We grab whatever the most recent poll is, and we use that, or we use fundraising data, which are kind of harder to track at the local level. So, I mean, I think we could have some slightly more competitive races here to some degree. We could certainly have some changes, but I think this is not, it's not a fait accompli like it is in some of these races throughout the region.
Right, right. Yeah, I mean, I think that the open race up, you know, I know Terry Wells is one of the candidates there. We have two incumbents running. Joe Belcher is the incumbent on the county commission, running against Parker Sloan, who won a pretty contested Democratic primary there. And then you have Jasmine Beach Ferrara, whose district kind of, again, they all got kind of split up. So she's the incumbent, and I forget her opponent. Do you know? I'm trying to think.
I do know, and I can't. I could have answered your question
before you
this
finish that
long
beer.
ago.
Okay. So, anyways, you have two incumbents and one open seat for that. So it's really interesting to watch that. See, again, they don't do polls for county commission races on average, and so it really is going to be one of those things where we'll just kind of see how what the outcome is, and then you study it afterwards, and we'll kind of know since it's a new district, right? And that's the idea.
Yep, that's exactly right.
Before we move on to the city council race, which I know a lot of you are invested in and very interested in, if you live in the city or live near the city, obviously whatever the city council does impacts a lot of what we do in our daily lives. I do have one more poll question, Aaron, if we have that ready to go. Now that you've heard from us a little bit, you've heard a lot about the presidential, the Senate, the congressional race, and some of the local races. What's the most important issue to you, the folks who are watching here today? What is the most important issue to you in this election cycle? And we've come up with a few options for you. You can always hit other. We've got the economy, healthcare, environment, social issues, so things like abortion rights, gun rights, I would put in that category, education, fiscal responsibility or tax code, I would say would probably part of that, and COVID-19 response, which as we spoke of earlier, nationally, I want to know what you guys think personally, what's your feeling, but nationally, jobs and economy still is up there. You know, what was the old Clinton line? It's the economy's stupid. And that's what got him elected probably as a pretty popular wartime president. But COVID-19 response has been right there. It's obviously dominating national news still. It's still a factor. It's become a political issue, whether you wear a mask or not. And so I know that's on top of people's minds, but I'm interested to hear your thoughts. Just give me the top two or three, Aaron. I think people can see it.
You're seeing economy and COVID-19 response, both at 30%.
Okay. Economy and COVID-19 response are both about a third of you feel that's the number one issue.
Followed by environment at 14%.
Environment at 14%. So interesting. It makes sense, though. Healthcare at 11%. All right. Well, thank you guys for your response. We really appreciate that.
It kind of mirrors the national polls.
It seems to, It seems to be right there.
It's a representative sample.
I would say environmentals, you know, in Asheville, we're a little higher on it, but it is a very important part of not just our economy, but of our social consciousness here. It's, you know, it seems to not even be as much a political issue here as it is a lot of places. People really care about that. We care about these mountains. We like to go mountain biking and do all those fun things. Do you think you'll see some of this before we move on to the city council race? We've got a few minutes here. Do you think we'll see, backlash about the whole mask debate? I mentioned it's become a political issue. Again, COVID-19, according to these respondents, is about a third of them say it's the number one issue for them. And that could go either way. That could mean, hey, I want to be protected and stay safe and make sure we're adhering to health protocols, or what I've heard a lot of, and you've seen a lot of on certain news sites, this whole thing's overblown. Like, it really isn't that bad. I'm not getting sick. Not many people I know get sick. If they do, it's a temporary thing and they're fine. And so do we see that politically playing out in one way or another? And are some of the candidates using it?
Yeah, absolutely. Right. So we've seen that. And traditionally, I say traditionally, it's a pretty new issue. But so the Democrats have tended to be a little bit more kind of mask enforcement, shut things down. Republicans less so on both of those. Those are, of course, just generalizations. You're not sure across the board. You know, we skipped over the for good reason, the gubernatorial race, but I think Governor Cooper is a great kind of case study in this, right? He's ridden this kind of COVID-19 wave, I think, pretty well. The problem, of course, if you surf, is that sometimes the wave crashes on you. And I think that's what we're kind of waiting to see is, can he get off soon enough? Is he going to continue to ride that wave? But yes, I think that is clearly going to matter. The other interesting one I would point to is the U.S. Senate race. So as you know, Tom Tillis has been pretty consistent and said, hey, wear a mask. Like, this is a good thing. And was caught one time without a mask. And love Tillis, don't like Tillis. I kind of liked this response. He said, essentially, I blew it. I should have been wearing a mask. I got caught in public without one, and I'm sorry. And it was more complicated than that. But essentially, that was his take, right? So, yes, it's mattering, and we can see that in the 11th congressional race as well. So Mo Davis has said frequently on Twitter, in debates, and everywhere else, hey, my opponent is meeting people maskless, and he's having these
Yeah.
maskless rallies.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, clearly that is playing out. It's of course changing how people are voting, this rise in mail-in. So it's difficult to understand this election without at least thinking through the lens of COVID-19.
And like I mentioned earlier, there's really smart people who do this for a living, and they're scientific about it. You wouldn't be seeing ads that point this out one way or the other if they didn't think it would sway a vote. They wouldn't spend money on it because it's too expensive to put political ads up right now from here till November at least. And so there's a reason why they're doing that. So let's move on. City council races, we interact a lot with the city council and the city staff. A lot of people love to focus and talk politics at the national level. It's just really sort of the thing that grabs the headlines. We know here locally that though the local government really dictates more what happens in your daily life, quite frankly. A lot of the stuff that happens up here can be esoteric. It can be kind of pie in the sky or big picture thinking, very macro. But what the city council decisions do, what county commission's decisions do, your town council decisions, impact your day-to-day. I mean, whether your trash gets picked up, does your sidewalk get cleaned or paved in front of your business? And so we care very much about these races. In the city of Asheville, we have 5 candidates now vying for 3 seats. Only one incumbent, Keith Young, is the only sitting city council member currently running for re-election. So we actually have kind of 2 open seats. You can consider that. What do you know about the candidates so far as what's been revealed? I know we're kind of coming to the wire here, and you're going to start seeing them all over the place with forums and everything else. People are kind of paying attention to that now. If you have a prediction, what is your prediction based on the primary vote and what you've learned since then? Yeah. And let's go down the list of candidates and let's talk about them.
Yeah. So I will not lay out a prediction. So I used to have this crystal ball and it worked pretty well. And in 2016, I dropped the thing on the ground.
Is that what
I keep trying to put it together and it just didn't work.
I think that happened to a lot of happened to a lot of pundits across the country.
Exactly. So I definitely won't put any predictions out. But so you've got, again, 1 incumbent, you've got 5 folks running, you've got 3 seats, you got 2 folks who have run for office before, of course, they're running for Asheville City Council. So there's people with higher name recognition. There also clearly was an appointment last week, I guess. Somebody was appointed to the Asheville City Council as well because Vijay Kapoor left to go back to Philadelphia. So we've got really what seems like kind of a wide open field. And I think if voters are thinking through how their choices may balance a current council, I think perhaps Kapoor's departure from the city council could actually matter to some point at the ballot box.
Yeah, I mean, I think Keith is the only incumbent. I would say that I think he came in second in the primary voting. A newcomer to politics, Sage Turner, who is no stranger. I mean, people know her. She's been in the community forever.
Newcomer to elected politics, but not to politics more generally.
Right. Yeah, exactly. But she got the most votes. She is a local, I would call her a local developer, but she runs a French Broad Co-op and has sat on the downtown commission for a lot of time. So she had some notoriety there. And folks know her. Of course, I'm sure she campaigned very hard for that, as you have to for these races. Don't ask me how I know from experience. The 2 folks you mentioned who had run before and had some name recognition are Kim Roney. I believe she came in 3rd.
Rich Lee,
she came in 3rd, and then Rich Lee, who came in 4th. So those are your top 4 vote getters in the primary. Rich Lee is a financial advisor, I believe, by day. Kim is a music teacher, and she was a bartender server, but I'm not sure if she does that anymore or not. But lives in West Asheville and has great connections out there and did very well out there in the precincts, from what I recall. And then the 5th person who's running now is Sandra Kilgore. Sandra's actually got a really interesting story. If you've never met her, I've met all these folks, but Sandra was the one I knew the least of the 5 candidates we just mentioned. But she's native Asheville, lived here for many years, went to UNC Asheville, kind of moved away, had a separate career, came back, and is now a realtor here. So 5 really interesting stories and 5 really interesting folks. And I think that the most important thing I would say to the audience, people watching here today, is be informed. We're going to do our best to help you get informed. We plan on doing one-on-one candidate interviews with each of those 5 city council candidates virtually. But the idea is to see if they align with the Asheville Chamber values and our community values as garnered through the ABL grader process. And I'm going to try to line up questions with them to help them know. There are no D's or R's in this race, I should mention. It's a nonpartisan race, but I think effectively, if you look at the registrations, they're all Democrats from what I know. But just so folks know, technically it is a nonpartisan race, and you won't see a D or R next to their name, like you will all the other races, including judges now.
That's right.
With that, do you have any closing words on the local election or anything you want to add to that, Chris?
Just that Asheville's gone back and forth on that, right? The partisanship issue in Asheville City Council, it's actually sort of ping pong back and forth over the years. So if you like the way we've got it set up now, then I think voice that concern. If you wish it was the other way, we could see change that way as well.
Right. And I wanted to say, too, the appointment that you mentioned for VJ Kapoor is Antoinette Mosley.
Yes.
She's an attorney with Austin Bird who lives here in Asheville, and we had a chance to meet and sit down and chat with her. And so her appointment will run through 2022, so that seat will not be on this year's election ballot. It'll be in 2022. So just for your information, I believe we have some questions.
We had a question about the status of city council district elections. I know that was something that was going on.
So do you want to take this one, Chris?
Go for it.
So someone asked about the city council district elections. Are there districts? No, there will not be districts this time. The city changed its charter, which was part of the controversy of the bill that was passed by Senator Chuck Edwards, who represents the southern part of Buncombe County. Actually, now he's going to be representing the eastern part, which is like Fairview and Black Mountain, that area, thanks to the new districts. But at the time, he represented the southern part of Buncombe County and South Asheville, introduced a bill that split the Asheville into districts, 6 districts, I believe. And so you would have had someone, depending on what corner you're in, you'd had sort of your own city council member. That is not the case this time around. To answer the question, you will be voting at large. So wherever you are in the city, the same 5 people will appear on your ballot, and you can vote for up to 3 of them. Yeah. You don't have to vote for 3, but you can vote for up to 3. And some candidates, depending on how they feel their chances are, will actually tell you to single shot, which means vote for 1, and it kind of counts as 3 in these elections. So it's kind of a quirky thing, but that is how it works with city council.
And I want to add too, like this whole debate over whether the state should be telling cities what they should do as far as their districts or their districting systems in general is one that's happening throughout the state, right? So we've seen these very same debates in Durham. I think we saw the same debates in Greensboro. So we've seen them throughout the state. This sort of, maybe it's a healthy tension, maybe it's not, but between local government and state government, I think that tension is in some ways rising in North Carolina.
Right, it really is, the state versus local. All right, I don't believe we have any more questions, so I want to thank everyone for tuning in here today. This has been Policy on Tap, talking elections. Again, I'm Corey Atkins with the Asheville Chamber, Professor Chris Cooper from Western Carolina. Chris, thanks so much for joining us here today.
Thanks, enjoyed it.
I really appreciate it. Thanks again to our hosts, Wicked Weed, specifically Cultura Restaurant attached to the Funkatorium. Thank you all for hosting us. Thanks to our presenting sponsors. A huge props to Allenstall and Kilbourne, Ashwall, and C.com to learn more about them. Thank you for being our partners here for Policy on Tap series. That's it from us today, and thanks everyone for tuning in. Until next time.